Sometimes we look at the Bible and we're excited to find something that shows, I don't know. I got to be careful with how I say this because I could fumble it pretty easily. We're excited to find something that shows female empowerment. Woo, Mary, yeah, go girl, you're a disciple. But can I suggest something here to you? Mary is not a wonderful example for the women among us. Mary's a wonderful example for any one of us here. She's an example for all of us. We all, men and women, should have the heart that Mary had and say, Jesus, I want to be your disciple. Jesus, I'm not one of the 12, but I want to sit at your feet and learn from you. Mary has something to teach, not just the women among us, but every single one of us, that we should be in that surrendered, submitted place of learning at Jesus' feet. How glorious for Mary. Now, Martha, on the other hand, if you see there in verse 40, she was distracted with much serving. Now, is there anything wrong with working hard for Jesus? I hope not. Because if there's something wrong with working hard for Jesus, then a lot of people I know are in a lot of trouble. Because a lot of people I know are very diligent servants of the Lord. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Martha's problem was not that she was working hard for Jesus, but that she was, did you see the wording there in verse 40? That she was distracted with much service. And friends, what do you think she was distracted from? Jesus? I think so. That's what she's distracted from. Now, friends, if you were to have somebody over for dinner, you want things to be nice for them. And think of how much more it would be true if you knew that Jesus was coming over for dinner. How about that? Tomorrow night, Jesus is coming over for dinner at your house. Well, for sure, you'd clean the house. You know, sometimes my wife and I, we say, it's great that we have people over. It motivates us to clean up the house. So you'd clean up the house for sure. You wouldn't take chances with the food. Sometimes it's like, well, you know, we'll take a try on this. Other times, like, no, we can't mess this up for sure. Although my wife is such a gracious entertainer. She, when we have people over, it seems like she wants to get extra experimental with the food. And she always hits it off, but boy, does it make me nervous. But she does great with it all the time. But you'd want to make sure that the food was just right. You'd decorate just right, but not too much, of course. You would fuss over every detail. You'd want to do it to serve Jesus. But friends, the point is plain. It's not much good to be busy serving Jesus if you're distracted from Jesus himself. You can't get your eyes off him. To use modern phrasing, we might say this: Martha lost Jesus in the ministry. She was serving, but she lost her focus on Jesus. Friends, I've been in ministry, pastoral ministry, for almost 40 years. And I was in some kind of ministry for a few years before that, teaching home Bible studies. Yes, I started in my teens, okay? I just want to lay that on the line. But 40 years I've been in some kind of ministry. And over those decades of service, I know what this is like. You can get very goal-oriented in ministry. We got to accomplish this, and we want to do it the best possible. We want to glorify God in the way that we serve. We want to serve his people. We want to connect with the needy world. All of those things are great. But in the effort, in the energy that's expended, in the focus that's put upon all those things, it's very possible to get distracted from Jesus himself. You can lose Jesus even in the ministry. You know, I love the story about when Jesus was a boy and he went with his parents to one of the feasts in Jerusalem. And where did they lose Jesus? In the temple. People have been losing Jesus in the church ever since. It's possible, isn't it? It's something always to be kept on guard about. Lord, I need to be careful about this. And one indicator of it are people who sometimes become crabby and irritable in their service, like Martha was. Or sometimes the tell is this: you look at all you do and you criticize those who don't seem to do as much as you do. That's where Martha was at. But friends, we understand this. The real problem here, it wasn't that Martha's problem was Mary. Martha's problem was Martha. She had become distracted, and she had taken a focus off of Jesus. Martha's frustration is typical of those who diligently serve, often with very good intent, but they forget to also sit at Jesus' feet. To quote Spurgeon, which I'll be doing a few times here during this message, but here's the first Spurgeon quote. Spurgeon said this: "The Martha spirit says, if the work is done, is not that all? The Mary spirit asks whether Jesus is well pleased or not. All must be done in his name and by his spirit, or nothing is done." Martha was so concerned about what she could do for Jesus that she missed an opportunity to be with Jesus. And that was an opportunity that Mary would not pass up. So Jesus is going to respond. Again, notice here, I love the way she phrases it. You could just see an exasperated Martha saying these words: "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me." Boy, passive aggressiveness. Why don't you just tell Mary yourself? Jesus, won't you tell her to come and help me? Now, Jesus' response here is in verses 41 and 42. "And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha." Okay, that should have been a tip-off right there. When Jesus repeats the name, I'm not saying you're always in trouble. As Tom and I were talking beforehand, it's not like when your mom used to say your first, middle, and last name. Whenever she said that, you knew you're in trouble. So it's not exactly like that. But at least it's adding intensity to the situation. It's like, woo. It's fascinating to go through the scriptures and see who were the people that God or Jesus doubly addressed. You have Abraham in Genesis 22. You have Moses in Exodus 3. Samuel in 1 Samuel 3. Simon in Luke 22. And Saul in Acts chapter 9. Oh yeah, there's times when you just want to be listening for that. Maybe you just, some of us ache, and you shouldn't ache to hear the audible voice of the Lord. You will hear it one day. You'll hear it when you go to heaven, but I think you open yourself up to easy deception if you just say, Lord, but I will just say this. If you ever do hear the audible voice of the Lord, just watch it if he repeats your name. Martha, Martha, verse 41. "You are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her." It ends there, doesn't it? Don't you wish we could have read something about Martha's reaction? Oh, I don't know. Maybe at that moment, a light turned on, and she sat down at Jesus' feet also. Maybe she shook her apron off and went back into the kitchen and thought about it later. We're not told her reaction. We don't know. But we do know that what Jesus said to her was very significant. Martha, verse 41, you are worried and troubled about many things. Martha, there's a lot of things pressing down on you. Verse 42, but one thing is needed. One thing. Martha, you're doing good. You want to serve Jesus. That's a good thing. But you have not added the one thing that is needed. You know, there's a few different places in the Bible where it speaks of that one thing. Let me read to you from Psalm 27, verse 4. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. Those are the words of David, the psalmist, in Psalm 27. David says, I'm looking for one thing. More than anything else, I want to enjoy a real relationship with God where I behold his beauty and I see him. I inquire after him. I inquire after his ways in the temple. Lord, I want to learn of you. That's the one thing that David was focused on. Then later on, in Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, the Apostle Paul wrote this. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching toward those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. It's as if Paul said this, I haven't yet come to a full knowledge of God. He just spoke in a couple verses before. He said, I want to know him, to know the power of his resurrection, to know the fellowship of his sufferings. I haven't yet come to that full knowledge, but this one thing is what I pursue.